Hello, fellow traders. Welcome to another trading recap. This is for Friday, September the 19th, 2025. We're trading the micro Nasdaq futures on the 800 tick chart. And as I mentioned in my prior videos, I like to do these just to review my trades to make sure that what I was doing is following my rules. And if there are trades that didn't work, why didn't they work? And kind of reverse engineer my mistakes and make and prevent them from moving forward. I've been doing this sort of thing, reviewing trades like this for over a few years, and it's helped my trading tremendously. And I hope that you guys can learn a ton from just watching these trading recap videos as well. So, looking back here, this is the overnight session. Started right here. I marked it at purple is where the 1700 close was, and this is the 1600 close for the Nasdaq. And as you can see, we went up and just kind of went a little bit further down. I have it marked right here as the overnight low. And then if we go further back, we did make a brand new all-time high yesterday at 11:20 Eastern at around 815, 24,815 zone. I got that marked. We are currently, you could see here, we are currently in a bigger uptrend line, which I had marked here. And we kind of broke through it. And then we have it marked here. And I'll go ahead and mark that for now. And as you could see, pre-market or right at 9:30, this triggered lower, but I don't take trades right out of the gate. But it triggered lower and it went ahead and stopped out, right? So let's zoom in so you guys can see this candle a little bit better. Where did the next trigger happen? First, let's go ahead and draw this trend line here as we do have a higher low. And let's go ahead and draw this trend line here as we have a lower high. So you could see right off the bat, we have a wedge. And you really don't want to be trading in the middle of the wedge. You really want to wait for a breakout to the upside or to the downside before thinking about taking a trade. Um, and so the next trigger was actually this candle here at 9:30.23. It closed above the standard deviation. It closed above this is the standard deviation off of the VWAP, by the way, in case you're wondering. VWAP's all the way down here. This is one standard deviation, two standard deviations. And then this is the 21 exponential moving average, this red line here. This candle basically closed above both of them, which would constitute a trigger. I wouldn't take this trigger though, because we do have a downward trend line and we have our swing high at the top here. So that being said, let's see what happens. It stopped out. This is why we didn't take it. Now we also have a bearish trigger. And you're going to notice a theme from today's trading session. It was very, very choppy the first hour. We're going to review about the first hour or so and notice how we're going to avoid a lot of the traps that were set in the market going either bullish or bearish because the chop was really bad. This is a bearish trigger. We wouldn't normally take it because we were in the middle of this bullish trigger, but also notice where the measured move is. If this is my stop loss up here and my target's down here, it's past this upward trend line. This upward trend line could act as support, so this move may not even make its target. So let's just see what happens. Another stop loss. You're going to see this theme a lot today. It's trades that we didn't take, even though they triggered because they didn't follow all of our rules. And so now we have another trigger right here. This candle closed above the EMA, above the standard deviation, but look at where its measured move is. It's all the way up here. It has to break this high, has to go through this trend line. So two very unlikely scenarios, as you can see, met with immediate rejection. So let's keep going. This is a trade we didn't take, again, because of all the obstacles that were in its way. Now, this is a bearish trigger below the 21 EMA, below the standard deviation, below this nice trend line that was triggered lower. But we still have this upward trend line here that we're dealing with. And the target is below the trend line. If the target was above it, we would take it. In this case, it's not. So we're not going to take this either. This did end up working, but we're going to keep track of it, even though we didn't take it. And we'll look at the next trade that we're going to take. In the meantime, we're going to pretend we're still in this trade, and we're going to keep track of the runner. The runner right now is still running. This candle broke this candle lower, so my runner right here, which I keep track with this pink line, is still running. The runner has not taken out. And finally, it's taken out right here. So this trade is now over. We draw this more immediate downward trend line, and this candle triggered higher, but again, wouldn't take it because we were in the middle of that bearish trade, and we have the EMA in the way. This did end up hitting its target 1-to-1 and then stopping out. So now we have this trend line here and potentially this trend line like this. Notice we haven't taken any trades yet. I'm just showing you where all the triggers are and why most of them did not work. So remember, trading is a game of probability, and you want to take setups that have a high probability of working. Okay, here we go. All right. So now we actually get a trigger lower because this candle closed below this EMA, below this trend line. This candle triggered it lower. We can't really take it because we were still in that bullish trade. Notice it almost stopped out. And what I say almost is because my stop losses are typically a point and a quarter above where the red line is. So this wouldn't have stopped us out. But it did end up hitting target. We wouldn't have been in this trade anyway because of all the chop. So let's keep moving. We're going to adjust this trend line here. We're going to delete this right now. And now we have another trigger going lower. Or technically speaking, if you were in this original trigger lower here, you had just hit target. So let's keep track of the runner. The runner finally gets taken out with this bullish candle. So we delete this trend line because we finally broke through it. This candle is our next trigger higher because we retested 750. Okay. We retested this bigger trend line that I have drawn here. And we closed above the standard deviation level. The problem is we have two potential areas of resistance. We have this EMA and we have this downward trend. So we would mark it if it triggered, but we wouldn't take it. So it did trigger higher. And notice it fell again into resistance and boom, stopped out. Simultaneously, this trade triggered lower, but we were in the bullish trade. So you can't take, you got to prioritize what triggered first. And in this case, the bullish trade was the one that triggered first. It didn't work. Again, it was really choppy this morning, very difficult. And most of the trades that were triggers were not actionable trades that we could take. So this trade hit its target. We're going to keep track of the runner. And the runner was here. It went down and then went back up. So the runner has been taken out. So let's do a few things. We're going to draw two trend lines here. We have We have this trend line here between these two candles and this bigger trend line between these two swings. Now we have an upward trend line here, and we're going to wait for the next setup, which if this candle closed above 750, closed above standard deviation, if this triggers higher, that would be the next setup. But there's not really a lot of room to take it, and we have the EMA right above our heads. So we're going to have to pass on this setup too because of this EMA. And you can see we stopped out. The EMA acted as resistance, and this trade also did not work. So we keep pushing on. This trade triggered lower, but we were in the middle of this bullish trade, so we wouldn't have taken this trade to the downside. It did end up working, but it's not a trade that we would have been in the middle of. Actually, let's keep track of this trade here. Sorry. And keep track of the runner, which right now would be a break even. And now the runner's been taken out. So now we have the golden ruler, which I haven't really been moving this whole time, really marks where our last swings are before we make any new lows. This is the last swing high. It also acts as a potential area of resistance up here. Um, this candle is our next potential signal candle. But again, you guys see a pattern. We have this EMA and this standard deviation level above us, so we're not going to take this trade. Also, the measured move is above where the golden ruler is, so we would skip on this trade as well. And you could see did not work. We're going to draw a bigger downward trend like this. Notice we're about 5 minutes in, haven't taken a single trade. That's fine. This trade, however, is a legitimate signal, but it is the trade that stopped out this trade. And I have a rule where we don't take trades that stop out the original trade that triggered. So even though this will trigger lower, we're going to pass on this trade. And you can see it didn't work. So now we draw this line here. And none of these candles are really trigger candles except maybe this one right here because it closed above 750. So we'll go ahead and mark that as our signal. It did hit, but we wouldn't have taken it. We have all this resistance overhead. And I want to correct myself for a second. I've been calling them trigger candles. Technically, they're signal candles, and the next candle that breaks it is called the trigger candle. So I want to go ahead and correct myself there. This trade is over. We delete this. Notice we're still holding strong here on this golden ruler, which is our swing high. It's still acting as resistance. We draw some lines. And now this is our next signal candle. Close below standard deviation, close below the EMA, but we can't take it because our measured move is below this upward trend line here. And also we have 750 that could act as potential areas of support. So we're going to have to skip this trigger as well, even though it worked, and that's fine. We're going to go ahead and keep track of the runner. The runner here is at break even. Now the runner is right here around 750. And the runner finally gets taken out. Okay, so now if this candle triggers lower, notice it closed below 750. It closed below the standard, sorry, the the EMA, the 21 exponential moving average, and we're now way below this trend line that's no longer valid because we've closed below it a few times. If this triggers lower, we will take it. And it did. And this was a stop loss. But this is the first trade that we actually took, and it was a loss. But I like the setup here. We are in a bearish environment. We are in a bearish trend, and it did trigger lower. And unfortunately, it stopped us out, and that happens. So this is our first trade, and I believe it was a loser. We took it at 938. We risked about, say, a little, say about a little over 12 points. So we say we lost about 13 points because I usually give it an extra point of wiggle room. So we lost 13 points there. That's okay. Now we have the next signal here, but we were in the middle of this. Sorry, the signal technically started here with this king candle. We were still in the middle of this bearish move, so we wouldn't have taken the signal, and we have this trend line in the way. We also have standard deviation in the way. Anyway, I believe it ended up not working. Did work, but we wouldn't have been in this trade anyway. And now we got to keep track of the runner. Runner's going to be right here. Now the runner is all the way up there and then it got taken out. So we're going to delete that. And our golden ruler moves to the bottom now. Becomes the swing low rather than the swing high. And now this is a trigger right here, but we do have the EMA in the way. It did end up working, and then it stopped out. So we have this trend line here. This is a trigger higher right here. This candle, this is a signal, but we had the trend line in the way and couldn't take it. Did pretty much almost work, and then it stopped out. Okay, so the next candle that triggered was this one. When I saw this, I ended up taking this candle's break, but I kept my stop loss above this candle right here. So I believe I took this candle. And this one was a crazy one because looking back at it, I probably shouldn't have taken this trade because the targets were beyond 750 and 750 can act as an area of support. So I normally shouldn't be counting this trade here. So here's what is going to happen. You're going to see it. It's going to go all the way up, retest. Um, it definitely would have stopped you out if you put your stop loss above this candle, but I put my stop loss above this candle instead, and I was able to take profits right around here. But I'm not going to count this trade, even though it worked, because I think it actually violated a couple of my rules. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on this one. And now we have this downward trend line here, which is why we couldn't take this trade north because we had this trend line that got in the way, and you could see it was immediate rejection. This candle triggered bearish, but can't take it. Again, 750 could act as support, and you could see it didn't work either. So there was a lot of really tricky spots. This was a trigger or a signal, I should say, triggered right here, but you were in the middle of this bearish trade, even though we didn't take it. You got to respect it. And this bullish trade did end up working, and the runner is still running. And the runner finally got taken out right there. Let's delete all the lines we don't need anymore that do not make any sense. So now we're going to draw this trend line here. We're going to draw this trend line there. This is a lower high. We have to keep track of it. So this was the signal to go higher right here. But again, we had this trend line and this trend line in the way, so we had to skip it, but it did end up working. Retested 800. And because the runner was still running, normally this would be a bearish signal to go down. But because the runner was still running, we didn't take it. And then simultaneously, there was also a bullish trade that happened here that signaled right there, but we had this trend line in the way. It did end up working. And then it was stopped out. We now have the golden ruler, I think alt right about here. These weren't real pullbacks. We have a signal to go lower, but we have the EMA in the way. So we're not taking it, but we'll measure it. And notice it didn't work. And then again, we have another signal here. We can't take it because 800 is above our heads and it's been acting as resistance, but it did end up working. And then our runner just got taken out right there. So now we're going to bring back this golden ruler. We're going to draw this trend line here as so. And we're going to draw another trend line like this. And another trend line like that. And now we actually have a trigger to go and retest the all-time high. And it did not trigger. So we're going to have to pass on this one. It did trigger up here. This was a signal, but the target was beyond the all-time high. So I personally would not have taken that. And look at that. Immediate rejection, profit taking up there. We are getting a signal right here. It's a signal candle because it broke this trend line to go lower. But look at all that support below us. We have the EMA, the standard deviation, the golden ruler, and the upward trend line, and 800. So there's too much support for me to go bearish here. So I can't go bearish. I'm going to measure it. It did trigger, but I'm not going to take it. It did end up working, but I would have never taken that trade. Now my runner's right there. Let's start deleting lines that we don't need anymore. The runner's been taken out right there. Okay, so now we have you notice here that these candles close below the golden ruler, so you move it to the top where the prior all-time high was. You have this nice bullish candle here that closed above 800, closed above the EMA, and but we have standard deviation in a way. We have this downward trend line. So if it did trigger higher, we would just mark it, but we wouldn't take it. See, it almost hit target, but what it did end up doing is create a lower high. And this is the perfect signal to go bearish. And notice it took out this bullish trade here. So we have this upward trend line that was finally broken. We wouldn't have taken this bearish trade anyway because we were still in this bullish trade. And so we gotta keep going here and just keep track of the runner until we actually get a setup that meets all of our rules. Okay, the runner is finally taken out. This is a trigger higher, but notice we can't take it. 800 is above us. You get this immediate rejection here. Sellers are waiting to sell back at 800. And this is a stop loss. We didn't take it anyway, but let's keep track. Okay, so I think this would be a signal to go south. Yep. So this is a trade we would take. And unfortunately, it didn't work. Well, let me think about it. Oh, there's news. Technically, 10 o'clock. Hold on. No, 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 no. I'm recapping this. Technically, the first signal here is here, rejection of 800, not this candle. This is a mistake that we've been correcting recently. This is your first trigger lower because it was a rejection of this zone, and this did end up working. But we wouldn't have taken it anyway because we were still in the same bullish trade that triggered here. And so you now have a bullish trigger, but you're not going to take it because of 800. You can see how tight range we've been basically all day. This ended up working, but not a trade I would have taken. And this also happened in a matter of seconds. You can see down here, 10 o'clock. We wouldn't have been able to react to any of these candles anyway, but we had to mark them just to keep track of them. And then the runner's right here. And now we basically have this trend line down here. Read this one. Runner was taken out. This is the next trigger lower because it is below 800, but you can see it immediately stopped out because we have the EMA right there, so we can't take this one either. And then this is a trigger higher, which we can't take because of this downward trend line, and we were in the middle of this bearish trade. So it's just been one nasty trigger after another. None of these trades are valid. They don't follow our rules. This one is a bearish trigger. We were in the middle of this bullish trigger, and we had the EMA here. It did end up working, but we wouldn't have taken it anyway. And then now we have this bullish trigger. We have this downward trend line here. You can delete this one. And it didn't work. We wouldn't have taken it anyway because of the downward trend line. And then you have another bearish trigger right here. You can see this back and forth. This was sort of the theme from this morning. Um, okay, so keeping track of the runner. Runner is right here. And now it's here. And now it's here. This is technically a bullish trigger to go higher because we're bouncing off the standard deviation, but the runner is still running, so we wouldn't have taken that bearish trigger. And now we're moving our golden ruler to here. This did end up working. It tested the stop loss and worked. I'm going to keep track of it, but we wouldn't have taken that trade anyway. And our runner was taken out right there. This is then a trigger to go bearish. We wouldn't have taken it. It worked. And then this is a trigger to go bullish, but look at what we're coming up against, the 800 and the downward trend line. So it didn't work. And now you have this upward trend line here, and you're getting a bearish signal to go lower, but you're going to run into this upward trend line and the standard deviation. It did end up working, I think, but we wouldn't have taken this trade. Keeping track of the runner. The runner's right here. And I was thinking to myself, we really need to break out of this range. If you look at it, look at this sideways movement that we've been stuck at. Tried to go higher, failed, going lower, but it's just been really, really back and forth, choppy action. The runner's been taken out right there. And go ahead and update this downward trend line. This is now, this is close, but this would be the bearish signal to go down if, because it closed right below it. I don't know. It's so close. Um, this is about 7 points. I'd probably be taking profit a little bit before the green line. So let's just call this a 6 point winner here at 10.16. Keep track of the runner. And I'm keeping track of the points we would have made on the initial move. The runner's taken out now. So we're going to update a few things, delete this line. We're going to bring this golden ruler to here, which then creates this downward trend line. And now we have a trigger to go lower right there, which we take, and it worked. So this is about, let's see here, 7 points. Let's just say we take off a point off that. So we'll call it another 6 point winner at 10.19. Our golden ruler now moves to here. We delete this trend line, but we have this trend line here, and we have this trend line here. Keep track of the runner. Runner was taken out right there. This is a bullish signal candle. We still can't take it. We have this trend line, EMA, golden ruler in the way. So it did trigger higher. We couldn't have taken it anyway. And now we draw this upward trend line. We'll keep track of the runner up here. So the runner is now right there. And the golden ruler is now below us. Runner is up here. Runner was just taken out. So now you can see here, this triggered lower. This was an inverted hammer that triggered lower. We can't take it because we have the EMA below us and we have this upward trend line. And so we'll mark it, but I think it gets stopped out. Yep, there's a stop out. And now we had this bullish signal right here. We were in the middle of this bearish one. We couldn't have taken it, but it did end up working for 5 points and beyond. We'll keep track of the runner. The runner is right here. And we move the golden ruler to here, which then presents this trend line like that. And we update it here. Now we have this trend line right there. Okay. Delete this, delete that. Now we're in a wedge. We're waiting for our next signal. This would be the signal higher, but we have 800 right there. We can't take it. 800 could be an area of resistance. So we're just going to let this trade play out. And it stopped out, as you can see here. Now, this is the next bearish signal to go lower, but we do have golden ruler right here. Oh, actually, technically speaking, golden ruler would have been up here. So this closed right there. This is the perfect bearish signal to go down. We're below the EMA. We're below the standard deviation. We don't have anything else in our way. So this did work. Actually worked right here. So this is about, let's see, 3 and 4, 7.5 points. So let's just say, we'll call this another 6-point winner at 1029. And now we have this downward trend line here. We did have a bullish signal to go up, but it would have ran right into this trend line, and you can see we have immediate rejection. And this would be the next trade lower, which I'm still contemplating whether or not we take it. But technically speaking, if we were to follow all of our rules, because this trade triggered higher first, we can't take the bearish trade. We have to respect the initial trigger, but this did end up working. And the runner was taken out. So runner was right there. So let's keep track of that. We have this trend line right there, this is our signal to go higher, but we have all this potential resistance overhead. So we're going to mark it, but we can't take it. And it didn't end up work. Oops. It didn't end up working. I think I lost my 1029 is where we were. Yeah, 1029. Here we go. So I was talking about this candle right here. Couldn't have taken it because of this trend line. And then this bearish candle did work. All right, here we go. Can't take this bullish candle either because we have golden ruler, standard deviation, and this downward trend line. So we have to pass on this one. And simultaneously, we're getting a bearish signal here, which I believe is going to work. So this is the better trade. But again, I'm contemplating whether or not we actually take the counter trade, even though you're in the middle of this original bullish trigger. Um, but I'm not going to count it for now. We are going to keep track of a runner, though. Runner's down here. Runner was just taken out. So we have this upward trend line, this downward trend line, and now we are in another wedge. This would be the signal to go lower. This one worked. Let's just see. This is about 3 and 4, 7. Let's just call this another 6-point winner. 1040. Our golden ruler moves to here. We have this one as the bigger trend line now, and this one is the micro trend line. And we would have kept track of a runner, which was taken out here. And now we have this bearish signal. Problem is, we are near 750 and the VWAP, so we can't take this bearish, even if it triggered lower. It didn't trigger lower. Let's delete this. None of these candles triggered, so we're just going to keep on pushing here. Now we have a double bottom. And again, none of these constitute a real signal. Update this. But this candle is technically a signal. And I remember seeing this saying, okay, this is great. And I was getting ready to get into it, but I noticed it was just going up like this. I didn't have time to, by the time I noticed that this was an actual signal to go lower, because you have this is actually a really good setup. Below VWAP, below 750, I actually didn't take this because I noticed almost immediately. Look at the time at the bottom. 10:45, 10:06, 10:21. I noticed it immediately stopped out. But for the educational purposes, pretend you just got into it right away. So this is almost 8 points. Let's just say this was like a 9-point loss here. I was lucky enough to not have gotten into this one, but this is actually a good setup. That just didn't work. And now you have a bullish setup here with bullish signal, but we have the EMA in the way. We're just going to mark it. We're going to delete. This line's now been, this line's done. And now we get to try again. So I saw this and I ended up taking this setup and it worked. This was about 6.75 points. We'll just say we roughly took this for 6 points here, 1045. Notice 1045 and 1045. It happened within the same minute. So even though I technically didn't get into this one and it stopped out, I noticed it rolled over. I was able to get into it again here, or get into it for the first time, I should say, and then take profit for about 6 points. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one the loser and this one a winner. We're going to keep track of a runner. We're going to move golden ruler down. Now we have a few different trend lines that we need to keep track of. Here's the bigger downward trend line. All right, the runner was taken out right there. This candle took it out. Let's draw the immediate downward trend line right here. This constitutes a signal candle to go north, but we have all this resistance over our heads. So we're just going to mark it and not take it. And it did end up working. We moved the golden ruler down now, and now we're going to keep track of a runner. And our runner was taken out right there. This will be a signal to go south. It never triggered. So we're just going to keep on pushing here. Now we have a wedge, clear direction going higher or lower. This one is a signal to go higher, but we have this trend line in the way, never triggered. So now we have an even tighter wedge, and there is your signal to go north. So let's take this trade higher. And it did end up working. This was a really big signal. It's about almost 14 points. Let's just say we got it for like 13 here. And now we have that trend line and we also have this trend line, but they're almost identical. Okay, the runner was taken out right here by this bearish candle. And we're now waiting for a signal. So this candle, if it triggers higher, it will be a signal, but it didn't. Instead, we get a bearish signal. And the question is there enough room between here and VWAP? The answer is yes. So we take it bearish. And it worked. This worked for about 5.25 or 5.75 points. We'll call it 5 points here. 1055 plus 5 points. This is our new downward trend line. We're going to keep track of the runner. The runner is right here and it's taken out. Now we get a VWAP bounce. So that's going to be the next signal to go up, but we have all that resistance overhead, so we don't take it. It does end up working though. And the runner is still running. Runner is right here. Runner gets taken out. And now this is their next signal to go north right here. If this trigger is higher, we're going to take this higher. It's exactly what happened. This is about a 7.5 point winner. Let's just call it 7 points, 1058 plus 7. Keep track of the runner. Runner got taken out right there. And now we have another trend line like this. So this is technically the signal to go south, but we triggered this. Sorry, we closed above the EMA, so I can't go south, even though it worked. I can't go bearish here. But we will keep track of the runner. The runner is still running. Now we are potentially bouncing off of this low right here. The buyers could be stepping in right here and bouncing there. Runner is still running. Runner is still running. We now move this all the way to the top here. And we mark a new downward trend line because this is a lower high. Runner finally got taken out. And our more immediate downward trend line is right there. We delete this because it was broken. Delete that, it was broken. And now we wait for the next setup. If this breaks lower, this is the trade to take lower. I couldn't take it immediately because we were still right where the trend line was. It did end up working, but I think this is not following all of our rules, so I didn't count this one. And the runner was taken out here. So we're gonna have two trend lines. This one and this one, which they're almost the same. This would be the signal to go lower if we get it. We do get it. And notice we didn't get stopped out here because I usually put my stop loss a whole point and a quarter above it. So technically we're still in this trade. I would have already taken profits here, but for the sake of this example, it did end up actually hitting the target. I would have gotten out about a point higher than this right here. So let's just say this was at 35 and we got out at like 25. So this was a nice 10-point winner. We didn't get stopped out because my stop loss is a point and a quarter above the red line. So this was a nice 10-point winner right here at 11.10. We can start drawing this bigger downward trend line here. Keep track of the runner right there, and let's delete everything else. Everything else has been broken. Okay, runner's out. We have a more immediate downward trend line right here. We have a more immediate upward trend line right here. This is our signal to go up, but we have resistance overhead, so we're going to skip it. Stopped out. And technically, this was the bearish signal here. We didn't take it because we were still in the bullish trade. It did end up working. I'm not going to count it though, so let's keep going. The runner is at break even. Runner is down here. And now our golden ruler moves all the way down to here because this is our last swing before we made a new low. And at this point, I would have probably stopped trading because I typically only like to trade for 2 hours. We can keep going though and maybe stop at noon where it's lunchtime. So let's go ahead and do that. We do get a signal to go up. We don't get it triggered though, and we wouldn't have taken it anyway. We have resistance overhead. So this is a trade to go down. It did trigger and it stopped us out. Hold on. No, sorry, the original down trade. Oh no, hold on. Technically speaking, the runner is still running. So this would have been the trigger here. We wouldn't have taken this because we were still in the original bearish move, which finally got taken out right there. So this is now our new trend line. This triggered higher, but we're not taking it. We have an EMA above us. Did work. Runner is taken out. This bigger trend line was also taken out. Now we have a signal to go back up, but we can't take it. We have the golden ruler in the way. It did work, but didn't follow our rules. We now have it worked, and then you have a stop loss. And then, sorry, not stop loss. The runner was taken out. This is actually the next signal higher. I took it. And it worked for about 7 points. We'll call it 6. So 1137. And now our golden ruler moves down here, which gives us access to this upward trend line. Keep track of the runner. And this was actually a really big runner here. I think it was like over 20 or so points. It was really nice that I was able to catch that one. And now we have this bearish signal to go down. If it does trigger, we can't take it. We have the EMA right there. So it did trigger, but we wouldn't take it. And you can see it stopped out. We now have this. We have this wedge. So we can't take this signal lower because of the wedge and the EMA. So we're just going to have to be patient. Oops. You draw this. And now this technically triggered higher, but we had this trend line in the way. So I believe it kept going and going and going. The runner's still running, and runner is still running. I think the runner finally was taken out right there. This would have been, it's actually no, technically no signal until finally we get this signal here. We closed above the standard deviation and we take it. And this was a nice 6 point winner. We'll call it five. And at this point, we are at noon. So I probably would have wrapped this up. So let's look at our results here. We started trading around 9:30 at market open. We avoided a lot of the choppiness, as you could see from the very, very beginning. We stopped trading around noon. We took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 trades. And out of the 13 trades, we had two losers. So we had 11 out of 13, which makes our win rate 84.6%. Let me go ahead and add up all of the winners and losers. We started off with a negative 13-point loser. And then we had one, two, three, four straight winners of 6 points each. So that's 24 points. Then we lost 9 points, had a 6 point winner, 13-point winner, 5 point winner, 7 point winner, 10 point winner, 6 point winner, and a 5 point winner. So if you add up all the trades, that's 54 points with an 84% win rate. And if you multiply 54 points by 20, assuming you took this with one mini, this is the equivalent of making $1,080. Of course, you got to subtract the commission and fees. So I consider that a really great trading session, especially with how tricky the trading session was in the beginning with all the choppiness. And if you're able to navigate the market when it's that difficult, you can navigate the market in any scenario. So I hope you found this super helpful and super informative. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment. I'm looking forward to talking to you in the near future. Hope you guys all have a great weekend, and we'll talk again next week.